very welcome to the launch of the Woman to Woman Show panel discussion here on Competent Women Ireland's YouTube channel with me, Roisin the Cleric. Our panel guests will be women from all over Ireland who are passionate about talking about all topics and issues relating to women here in Ireland and abroad. I'm delighted to introduce my panel of guests, starting with Rosemary, who is a mum with grown-up kids who spent her 20s living in California with the majority of San Francisco and are very enmeshed with the gay community, arts and music, which all went together at the time and place. Rosemary is now back living in Dublin. Soccer is the Soccer is a spokeswoman for the Countess. Soccer is a camogie fan, long-time breastfeeding supporter, former midwife and a mammy of three daughters, a dub living in Galway. Paula Kelleher is a Justice certified holistic reproductive health practitioner and fertility awareness educator. Paula specializes in teaching women the art of observing, understanding, and interpreting their fertility biomarkers. Many of our viewers can click on the link below in the description box to see the one-to-one interview with Paula and myself. Tracy Donegan is a registered midwife, author, and founder of GentleBirth app. And at the end of the show, right up until March, we will be having extended segments to discuss why Irish voters should vote no in the up and coming Irish referendums in March, which are on International Women's Day. So our topic and panel discussion for today is a follow-up interview which we had with Paula Kelleher, which was on all things fertility and ovulation. And if I had planned it, it would never have worked. But today we are chatting with Tracy Donegan, as I mentioned in our intro, is a registered midwife, author and founder of GentleBirth app. And we're going to be talking about the current state of the Irish maternity services, high inductions, the lack of birth options, high cesarean rates, and growing birth trauma. We'll also be touching on the maternal mortality and all things that ties in with poor care for women and babies. We'll also be discussing the gender issues here in Ireland and the importance of sex language in healthcare, where birth professionals who are supposed to be evidence-based, but how can they when they all say that biology isn't true or that men can breastfeed? Women are so disappointed that they are now contacting Tracy, asking for advice on classes on how to avoid these professionals, which are usually evident by their declared pronouns. Ladies, you are so welcome to our first panel discussion.
Thanks, Roisin.
Thanks, Roisin.
Thank you very
Delighted
much.
to be here.
And so I'm going to come straight to Tracy. Tracy, you are a midwife. You're also a doula.
Yes.
And you set up your app to help women in midlife and all the healthcare professionals. But we're going to go straight in deep into the issue is what is happening here in Ireland within the maternity care. What is happening because everyone's all over the place.
Yeah, we've seen significant step back since COVID. So when COVID arrived, we felt like, women were being, we were getting more choices. Induction rates were kind of stable. They weren't on this trajectory we are now. But since COVID, we've really taken a significant step back for women's choices. We are inducing women at like ridiculously high rates, dangerously high rates. So we are, expecting to have like a national cesarean rate of at least 40% by the end of the year. So, and 40% might seem like a big number, but when we look at, if we look at some of the maternity reports that come out every month, you'll see like there's units that have 60% induction rates and really high cesarean rates. And women just are not getting the information to make informed decisions. So and we're kind of pushing induction earlier and earlier. Yeah. And it's so frustrating for women aren't getting the information. They're being told that, induction is, a straightforward procedure. You don't want to take any chances. So, and letting women know that this is a very benign intervention. You'll come in, we'll get you settled in, and we'll start you with these drugs. They're not telling women that this induction can last 2 days or maybe even more.
Wow.
They're just, and then we're, water birth in this country is just such a joke. It is, we have some units now that have come back to offering water immersion, so you can get in the bath, but you can't have a water birth. Like, for example, the Rotunda actually installed a pool. I think it was probably about 15, maybe 16 years ago. Fabulous pool. We had Ethel Burns. I brought her over to train the midwives in water birth. And we really thought this was the beginning of it. We'd already seen water births happening in the midwife-led units. But then there was a tragic outcome in Cavan and everything was on hold. But it was on hold for years. This was supposed to be an investigation. And when the HSE eventually got around to this investigation, they found this was not something that it was a rare event. And as we've seen in all the research, water birth, water immersion is deemed to be a very safe option for women. So, but the Rotunda ended up taking their pool out because the official line was that women didn't want to use it. They weren't asking to use the pool. They all wanted epidurals. So in my line of work as a doula and as a midwife and teaching childbirth ed, I knew this was nonsense because I'm talking to these women. So they removed the pool, but in fact, the reason they removed the pool was they were worried that women would not get out at the end, and that women would insist on staying in the pool and could have an accidental water birth. So they thought, instead of having this ever happen, we'll just remove the pool that cost no idea what it cost the taxpayer. But then about 18 months ago, they decided to put a pool back in again. So this is where your taxpayer money is going. They put the pool back in. They brought over an international expert to teach on water birth. The pool went in. There was a lot of lovely publicity about it. And I did a freedom of information there a couple of months ago to see how many women were using the pool, because I was talking to women who were working with me for childbirth education, and they were saying, yeah, I asked, and they said it was full, or there was somebody already using it, or they were holding the room for somebody else. So in the year since the pool was installed, 20 women have accessed it out of, I don't know how, I think the Rotunda birth figures, it might be about 8,000 a year. So 20 women were able to access the pool. So this is the lack of choice. It's not the lack of choice. It's put out there like, oh, you have choices. We have this lovely pool here, but in fact, it's been held because if there's an emergency, we need this bigger room. So it's the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
That's just one of like many issues that continues to happen. The lack of staffing. I mean, there was a midwifery festival in Ireland there a couple of months ago, and midwives were standing up and saying, it is dangerous. Our service is dangerous. Like, and I'm sure Sorka will chime in here as well. When you have a maternity unit and you have 30 women and babies in postpartum, and you have 2 midwives on that night shift, dangerous care. And yet we're talking about this national maternity strategy that has been, is still sitting gathering dust, that the government has absolutely no interest in. We have been down this road of maternity strategies a million times. I've been doing this since 2005. This is far not the first. It will not be the last. The government likes to spend money on these reports and then do absolutely nothing with it.
Dorsey,
that's the start.
Yeah, you're a midwife, and Paula, I saw you shaking your head as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not practicing anymore, and I worked when I worked in Ireland, I did home births with women, so they were deliberately opting out of the system that Tracy's describing there. But at the moment, the women coming through our breastfeeding support group would absolutely back up what Tracy's just described there. They're describing very poor support, especially after they've had their babies. But also things like not having procedures explained to them properly, being left to labour alone, their husbands or birth partners being left outside, having to kind of basically sneak themselves out of the unit to go down and get support from somebody who is there for them, rather than, be shared by one midwife among 5 or 6 women in kind of early labour or in the antenatal ward. And that all leads to intense stress on those mums when they have their babies.
Yeah.
So I've seen them mostly when they come to the breastfeeding group or when they phone our service in distress because things aren't going well. And often it's driven by those first few days after they've had their babies or while they're in labour, that their confidence in their ability to mother is completely eroded by the system that's run them through. They think their bodies are broken and dysfunctional. They think their baby's not going to feed. They think their breasts aren't working. And in actual fact, what's happened is they've been completely failed by the very service that's supposed to build them up as mothers, supposed to offer them choice, give them the control over what they want to do. But it's just it just gets taken away at every turn for I'd say the vast majority of women, and I would say especially first-time mothers.
Yeah.
Mothers who are in having their first babies are so vulnerable to not just putting their trust in people they're supposed to trust.
Yeah, I mean,
Broken
I
now.
wonder what drives the induction rate? Is that to control the date? What's
It's
the
more-
high
this is where-
induction rate?
Yeah, this is so interesting because
Yeah.
when I started first when I was teaching classes back in around 2005, and for the next kind of couple of years, we were at a birth rate at around, I think it was like, was it 60,000 births, 70,000? I can't remember what it was, but we're down like significantly. So it was, you could understand the production line model of, we have all of these women, we only have these few beds. So we're talking about bed management, first of all.
Yeah.
So, but now we're at a point where the birth rate has dropped significantly. And you would think, because I know like my colleagues who are working in the hospitals, like at the coalface, are dealing with significant stress every single day because they are not supported. We have not invested in maternity services and in the support of our midwifery staff. So what happens is we have midwives that are in a system that are really disappointed and really disillusioned and are ready to leave the system. So we've got a significant drop in birth rate, which you would think would translate into, okay, maybe the midwives can actually take a breath here for a minute and not be, absolutely worn down and broken when they're leaving a shift. But instead, we, like as soon as COVID ended, our induction rates just crept up. So how can any maternity unit in the country stand by a number of 50% of first-time mothers need to have their labour chemically started? It is absolutely
I don't
nonsense.
understand that.
It is nonsense.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's being portrayed as a very benign procedure. And then if on the other hand, you're being told, you don't want, you're going to take a risk with your baby if you go over, and can you forgive yourself? The level of coercion with first-time mothers is an absolute disgrace. I've some of the women that I've been interviewing in the last couple of weeks, really experience of not being believed. And here we go again, women not being believed. I think we've heard this before. Women not being believed, even if they have written birth preferences and they've had, literally everyone other than the Pope has signed off on these birth preferences, that women are being told, well, around monitoring things. Like, we know the evidence for monitoring, especially continuous monitoring, is absolutely not there. But yet every woman that walks in those doors is going to be told this monitor has to go on. We have to monitor the baby. And if you don't, then it's well, again, it's what we call the dead baby card is played. Well, how would you forgive yourself if something happened to your baby? Instead of saying, again, informing parents that you have a choice, and the choice that's actually being pushed on you as you walked into that maternity unit is not evidence-based and is more likely for you to end up in surgery having an unplanned cesarean. And the effect on that and your newborn will be long term. So this is Right, the induction is absolutely ridiculous. And then you have this cohort of women who are going through inductions. We have at least an 18% birth trauma rate. Women are coming out saying, because they think that was normal. They thought, well, that's how birth was. And then they've had this horrific experience. They are absolutely traumatized. And either they're deciding we're not having any more kids, or we're just going straight to a planned cesarean the next time. And as Sorka was saying, these women believe that it was their fault. My body failed me. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, you know what? A full-term pregnancy is 42 completed weeks. When we started inducing women at 39 weeks, we were asking for trouble. And I would say 50%, if not more, of the women that I speak to on a daily and weekly basis have had really awful induction experiences. Now, it can go really smoothly if the body is ready and you're, a little, whiff of testosterone can do it. But generally, it's a roll of a dice that I would really, anyone that's watching, to really consider, the pros and cons of inducing when there's not a compelling medical reason.
It's that lack of a compelling reason, I think, is so. I think that's so accurate, Tracy, what you said there. It's like there's vague reasons. There's always some reason, but it's rare that it's much rarer that reason is absolutely compelling. That the evidence is overwhelming that induction is really the safest path for that woman. Occasionally it'll be 50-50 and then it should be the woman's choice. And often it's the case where, in fact, waiting would have been a more appropriate action in that point. Waiting, watching, trusting mother to monitor her baby's movements, all that kind of stuff. And they're, so the baby's too big or too small by scan, which we know is inaccurate, or that's very common that we see in the breastfeeding group, where they'll say they were told the baby is either too big or too small, and the baby is somewhere in and around average, and the induction was essentially, unnecessary, really, because they know those measurements aren't accurate.
That's a big element to it as well, is that birth and pregnancy and birth in general is just viewed as an illness. So it's it has to, it's the mindset is that it has to require medical intervention. And the fact that women do, the culture now is to go to hospital to give birth. So it's you need to, if you need medical intervention. So it's completely sort of removed from the actual natural process of if you actually, the baby should come out the same way that the baby went in, in privacy, and with the people that you really trust, and kind of calm lighting and calm setting, and somewhere that you feel comfortable. So I think, it's just the whole, when birth, kind of became more mainstream in hospitals, the whole thing has just kind of spiraled out of control. And it's if you go to a hospital to give birth, it's most likely that you will have a cascade of interventions, because that's what they do in hospitals. They try to treat, or give you medicine to support to fix the illness or whatever that you're experiencing. So it's very difficult to avoid it. But I do think as a result of this, there is definitely an increase of women who are trying to access home birth services, even though that is also quite can be quite difficult to access in Ireland as well, because you have to live within, I think, 10-kilometer radius or maybe 30-kilometer radius of a hospital or something, that if you live outside of that, then you wouldn't qualify, and you have to be incredibly low risk, and I think below a certain age, and you have to kind of tick all these boxes. So it's not that easy to actually qualify for a home birth either. But I think on the other side of it, then there is, what I've heard through the grapevine, is kind of an increasing sort of free birth community as well in Ireland. So women who are just taking it into their own hands, and it's no home birth service, no nothing. It's just they maybe do a course online, or they maybe have a doula, or probably not hire a private midwife, because there's so many insurance and licensing things around that. But they just take it into their own hands and just birth at home, alone or with a partner, or with a doula or something. So there's definitely kind of
which is very risky for people involved, not necessarily in terms of the birth, but I kind of just want to put up one of those public service announcements. It is a crime to knowingly attend a birth without being a registered midwife or a doctor. So while the woman is not committing any crime by having her baby at home on her own, anyone who knowingly attends that is. And so you do have to, you know, like I'm sure Tracy is the same. You can't. It's very difficult to even speak to somebody who you know has even kind of, they'll kind of throw a little line out to you, and you're kind of going, oh, ew, I can't really have this conversation, you know, because it's a breach of
Oh.
laws. Like it's serious, you know, and can lead to serious consequences for not the woman.
But you have to look at, like, what would drive
Oh
a
yeah.
mother to you know, because being midwives, we know, we've kind of seen both sides, and most of the time birth goes really well if we just step back and do our observations, and but let mom go do her thing, and we're there, as a support, but what, like, to take that chance, and it's a tiny risk that something catastrophic could go wrong.
Yeah.
But like and that's a big, like, somebody that I spoke to very recently who's she's a nurse, and she also has done some doula work, and she, just based on her experiences of accompanying women into Irish hospitals, she was like, not a chance am I dealing with that, and as a nurse, like, so we have, care providers themselves opting out because they've seen how badly women are being treated. So it wouldn't be for me, but I can see why it's so attractive and why it's growing here in Ireland.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah,
I
completely.
wondered if you could there's an interview on the channel about a doula, but I couldn't find one in Ireland. It's funny, and then I met you in Dublin. You said, I'm a doula. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Well, my daughter's best friend is over in Spain now doing her doula course.
Right.
She's 25 now, and she's absolutely beautiful girl now. You want to see her. I mean, inside and out, she's really just lovely, gentle person. And she said she's come across this gender thing, in her learning and her teaching, and she's like, what the hell, that men can have babies and all this. And she's like,
yeah, I was training as a doula as well, and for that exact reason is why I didn't continue it, because the content that they were teaching was like, they didn't mention the word woman or mother anywhere in the training manual. And they also said that a woman who was taking testosterone while she was pregnant, that wouldn't affect the fetus, and that for me was like the final straw. I was like, no, I'm done.
Yeah, she's just like, she just didn't think this was, like, she's like kind of shocked, she's only a young one. Now, I don't know what she's like in Spain. I'm sure that they probably have a European wide, or I mean, I don't know, is doula a private? Is it like a homegrown thing? Is it underground?
No, it's been around for, I mean, they say it dates back to Greek terms, when there was this, a female member of the household staff was the doula. So she would attend to the mother in labor, and just, I think, like, the modern definition is someone that will, usually a woman herself, who will provide information, comfort measures, and be a continuous presence with that woman. Because when you walk into maternity services, now luckily enough in Ireland, you're going to be assigned a midwife and you have that continuity. But again, and most of the midwives are going to be lovely and delighted to see it, but you don't know the midwife. And
no, I never met the midwife until the day my children were born, and I didn't speak to them at all. I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about the midwives.
Yeah.
But what we know about doula training is that doulas are an obstetric intervention. So the research is very clear that women who have a trained doula with them in labor, as opposed to not somebody from the staff who's been trained as a doula, or their partner, or someone from within their social circle, that the outcomes are improved. Women are having less cesareans. They're less likely to need augmentation of their labor with, the drift. More likely they will bond better with their babies. They will feel more satisfied with the experience, and less likely to experience mental health concerns. So there is a huge opportunity for doulas in this space to support women to have, a great birth, as the mother defines what a great birth is.
I can see that, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But Ireland we're still catching up on the rest of the world when it comes to doulas. when I moved back to Ireland when was I back? In 2005, I started the first doula service in Ireland. Went around and met all the masters in the hospitals. They all thought it was a great idea. Most of the masters at the time had studied abroad. They were familiar with doulas. But what was interesting was what their concern was, we have no problem with doulas coming in, but we're not sure the midwives will like it.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're at a point now where years later, it's definitely we're in a better spot but some maternity units, you have to write to them and you have to ask for permission to have this intervention that is demonstrated to improve outcomes. And women are not always getting a positive response from the units. So it depends on the hospital, but we know that it can make a huge difference to women's experiences of labor and birth. But some midwives don't like the fact that there is an educated witness in the birth room who is also seeing kind of what's happening. But I think, if you're a midwife and you're providing sensitive, individualized, evidence-based care, you have nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
You should, and the doula can be an absolutely brilliant support to the midwife as well, who's running all around the place, has clinical care to focus on. That our priority is the clinical care, and we have this other member here, this doula, who can help, with mum when I'm working on paperwork, and can really it creates a really nice team environment, and when it works well, it can be absolutely fantastic for everybody, and the midwives love it too.
I would have loved a doula. I'm telling you, because sometimes you don't feel supported in your pregnancy by your husband at all. And
yeah,
and there's a lot of women would be alone, especially with a lot of immigration and stuff. Even my brother's wife is Chinese and her mom wasn't here, for her pregnancy. So, it's just, it'd be just absolutely wonderful to have somebody that you felt was on your side, that was advocating for you. It would be absolutely priceless. And I could see that you would be 100% influenced by them and would have so much more courage to speak your mind and to make your choices and to choose to go along with her as a support, and we're in this together kind of thing. You'd have a lot more courage to take chances with natural birth. And not that I would have probably, because I did have an epidural because I was terrified, but I also didn't have any stitches, and I didn't have long labors or anything. And I was induced because of Kim was my waters broke, and I was induced after 24 hours, but I don't think it was 1998. They weren't doing that. They weren't inducing people for no reason. So I would have loved any woman. I think even if you had the best husband in the world, it's nothing like a woman.
Exactly.
no.
Nothing. And partners get exhausted if you're in a long labor. And again, no matter how amazing your partner is, if you're in a long labor, my partner, you're it. You need to remember all the antenatal education from the classes. You need to, facilitate for me, because I'm going to be focused on my labor. So, and if now it's been, maybe you were up all night before, and now you're a lot into this labor, and your partner is like this, and and they didn't realize how intense it is for them to be that sole support, and it can be really exhausting. So having that extra person with you can, you can send dad, go on off and get a cup of tea, get a sandwich, or go out into the car, get a kip for half an hour. And they can go knowing that, okay, I know my partner's been really looked after. And so it can work really, really well. And and especially for anyone who has, who's nervous about hospitals, and most of us are.
Yeah. And now that there's no real care going on, I'm sure in the olden days, there was no husbands around because they were in the pub and they were drowning the baby's head or whatever. My dad was definitely not in any of my mum's, 5 births. But I'd say there was more care from even the nuns and the nurses. Maybe would I be wrong or right back in the day?
And the other women within the community as well would have looked
maybe. And mums and aunties, and things.
And neighbours. It was the neighbours when I came home from hospital, and that's what I like about doulas. They look after you, not just
postpartum.
And
Wow.
I remember I
Yeah.
brought my baby home and I went, oh my God, like my first
Mm.
baby, Naomi, 32 years ago tomorrow she was born. Yeah.
Ah,
And
Wow.
it's funny when I was talking to Paula, all those things came back. And I remember bringing her home and go, what do I do? You know, how do I change it? No, I knew how to change
Yeah.
nappy, but she was my baby. And,
mm.
you know, what if I hurt her? And, colic, she was a colicky baby. She wouldn't sleep. And I remember a neighbor up the street, my husband was telling, her son, and she was an older woman, she had about 20 children. And so she knocked at my door and she said, I hope you don't think I'm being nosy. Do you want me to give you a hand feeding? Well, she took Naomi. I was stressed because Naomi wouldn't even take a bottle.
Mhm.
And Naomi took the bottle straight away, drank the whole bottle. She said, your little baby girl knows you're a new mum. And she's
Yeah.
playing you up. And and I think to me that was like the little scallywag. She knew me before when she was in my belly, she was in the womb. She knew I was a new mother. She knew. And here comes Mrs. Elliot. Mrs. Elliot. And remember, Mrs. Elliot, she just came down, Naomi in her arms, and Naomi was happy as Larry. That, that was to me what I think if my daughter, who's 32, has a baby, I would pay for a doula. I would save up while she was pregnant just for that.
Yeah.
And if she's in the labour ward, new mums, we're nervous. We don't know what's going on. We forget our medical history. We forget what happens when we're just pregnant or 6 months pregnant. Well, the doula would have that all in her files and she'd be able to calmly tell the midwives or the doctors what's going on and just allow you to be in that mother nature joy of bringing your baby into the world. I'm going to start crying now. But I think it's
And
Sorry, this has been great, but I have to log off now. I'm really sorry, but it was really nice to join you just for the few
Nice
minutes,
to see
and
you.
good to see you all. Yeah, and
thanks a
yeah,
million,
enjoy.
Paula.
Okay, no worries. Okay, take care,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. We'll talk to you
Bye.
soon.
bye, Paula.
Bye bye. See ya.
So that is to
Am
me.
I supposed to be pressing a button or anything? No.
No, you just sit there and just
Okay.
be you,
Okay.
Rosemary.
Enjoy.
I'm not. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing something. Okay.
No.
Thanks.
To me, that's what a doula is,
Yeah.
and it's so powerful when
Mhm.
women can enjoy that being a mother, the whole process of, pregnancy, building that relationship with your baby, and, that transition from just being a woman to being an expectant mother and then mother.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like probably what Tracy might have more information on this, but the consequences of that transition not being supported are so profound for women. And
Mhm.
in my opinion, that is contributing to a lot of poor mental health for new mothers. The lack
Yeah.
of support and the loneliness and the isolation that comes with that and the trauma of it's. I was thinking about this when you were explaining what we were discussing, Roisin, and it was like the traumatic birth is not necessarily what happened during the birth, but it's how you were treated during the birth. I'd say Tracy nodding away there, because I've had experience of somebody describing what sounded to me like a perfectly normal experience in birth, no intervention, everything went grand, and being extremely traumatized by what was said to her. And another incident where I attended a birth where anything that could go wrong went wrong. Like the whole thing was just, emergency bells, people running in, everything, anything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And I got a lovely card the next day, and the card said, "Thank you for making it such a lovely, peaceful experience."
Oh,
Were you in the same room as me? Like, 'cause that was not peaceful. But she had experienced that because of how everybody was speaking to her in the room, how she felt before everything went wrong, how she felt after everything went wrong, that the thing that went wrong was so short, that the rest of her experience was good. That she kind of, maybe when she went home, she was going, oh my God, it was so traumatic. But I just thought it was so funny because she had explained to me how traumatized she was by her first birth, which was, by all accounts, like normal. Nothing went wrong. Like everything was fine, but she was She was traumatized because of how she was treated and how she was spoken to, not because of what happened. And so
Right.
if you have a doula there, you know, who can help you through that. So you might have a very, what sounds on paper, traumatic birth, but it could still be beautiful and still leave you feeling in control and feeling empowered by that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, sorry Tracy for taking over there. That was just
No, I was just going to say, it's,
Wow.
if the doula is doing her job well, you know, she's, you know, and again, we can't prevent all trauma, but if we're doing our job well, we can, you know, reframe the experience, help the mom reframe the experience, remind her of her courage, remind her of her grit, and just really to again help build that woman up, depending again based on what's happened. But we have to look as well at the societal benefits for women coming through this transition in a positive way.
Yeah.
So again, and we see this, you know, all this research that's coming out, again, looking at the impact on society of doulas. So we are seeing, you know, improved mental health, and these are especially in low income demographics. So we're talking women who are already vulnerable, at risk. When they have the opportunity to have a doula, there's less, here we go, less preterm birth, because women are being supported and their stress levels are being reduced. We know that systemic racism is a huge issue as well. So, but what we're seeing now is that doulas are making a significant impact on this transition by improving mental health. Moms are more likely to breastfeed, so we know there's huge benefits there
way more.
for mother
Way
and
more.
baby. And the costs to our health system, if we're not breastfeeding, or if we have all of these women having cesarean birth and the long-term implications to their health and the baby's health of that cesarean birth. So there's significant really cost savings for the government if they were to, you know, have a national doula program where women can access doulas without having to remortgage their home.
Yeah.
There should be a lot of money available in the government now where you're allowed, where you can have services like doulas. You can have these extras that prevent, like in the end, if you have a society that isn't poor, that people aren't jealous of each other, that's in full employment, that people feel that there's hope, that they're getting their education, they have access to education. And during the years of the Celtic Tiger, crime went way down, you know, because lots of people in construction suddenly had money, and they were people that were normally in poor housing estates, and they were the trades and stuff. And suddenly they were able to afford, and they had, you know, the apprentices had a bit of hope, and crime went down as employment went up and standards of living go up. That always happens. So it's always a benefit of society if we enhance people's life experience and people's hope, and mental health services. All that stuff goes down when you put money into the things that seem to be invisible and non-capitalist projects or enterprises, but they feed society. They make society richer. They educate people. They give people hope. They pull people out of depression. And you can. I mean, look at the mental health state of the world. I mean, it's not just Ireland, but that's all because people have lost hope. I mean, we've taken away what's beautiful, all the beautiful things like, you know, love and bonding and relationships has been made into a commodity, you know, with the porn industry and with Tinder. It just seems so non-human, you know, and these are commodities. These are the things that we die for. I mean, every grand novel, people are dying for love. So if we use love now as a commodity that we can buy and sell, then that's our most precious connection. And we're reducing it to a commodity, you know, and that's why porn is bad for people.
Well, we must do a show on that. We must actually get on.
Yeah, that's off topic,
but you talk about love. There's no greater love than a mother and her unborn baby and her newborn baby and her baby. And what struck me was is, I want to talk about mental health and postpartum depression in a minute, but I remembered as I used to wake up about 3 or 4 seconds before my baby used to wake up. And I used to think that intuition, that ESP, that connection between mother and baby
Yeah.
was powerful, and that love. And I think I mentioned it on Paula's interview. I remember my daughter Naomi, she just had given birth that she was born at what 6:31 that night before, and the next day my father-in-law was he was a kidney dialysis transplant patient, and he had gone up to Omagh because I was in Derry, not the Geld, and he went to Omagh for his kidney transplant for his kidney dialysis. And my mother and daughter went down. They must have went down for a smoke. And when I was in the ward, and they said, "Oh, Roshan's had the baby. Come up." And he came up, and he had a really deep voice. And I was feeding Naomi, and Naomi just turned her head and looked at him. She knew his voice.
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I just, like, babies know their families. They know whose family before the baby is born.
Yeah.
That
connection is, I remember reading a paper recently, and it was, again, looking at this, because it's not just, mother and baby, it's the mother-baby dyad. We have this, we're intertwined relationship. And they showed that there are, like, how we're physically connected to each, are physiologically connected. So when a baby starts to fuss, maybe they're wanting to nurse, that there are inaudible components to the baby's cry that stimulate increased blood flow to the breast. So we can't even physically hear these. They are inaudible, but they've been able to link them with changes in the breast, in blood flow. Just so we're not even hearing it. We know, but it's changing our physiology. So there is that relationship. We're just completely intertwined with our babies.
The breasts are amazing things. I mean, when I was breastfeeding, I had this big pile of Lelesh books that I used to read all the time. I read every Lelesh book in Dunleary Library and Dalkey Library, and every other mystery book and every spy book, every book that was readable. But I was absolutely, because I wanted to read about breastfeeding, and the Lelesh League were the breastfeeding books, and they were extreme and and all that, but they were brilliant because they were it was just so much stuff, and I read so much about.
Frozen there for a brief moment.
Yeah.
We'll wait to see if she comes back. Sometimes if I move the mouse, she comes back. She might come back. Well, we'll wait for her to come. There you are. You're back, Rosemary. You froze.
Oh, did I? Oh, I didn't touch anything.
That's Wi-Fi.
Come back. But breastfeeding is so powerful. It's that, and as you said, but that makes sense, Tracy, that the baby's cry creates that, that energy and frequency within the mother's body. And gets the breast ready and all the ducts and that makes sense. That frequency is doing something. It's Mother Nature at best.
Yeah.
It's powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Have we lost, do you think then, this is bringing us, have we lost through the generations of becoming over medicalized, that we're losing this mother bond and Mother Nature working at her best?
I would say new mothers are bonding. It's such a powerful natural reaction that I'm not sure it's possible to lose it entirely, but it's certainly possible to disrupt it a little bit. On an intellectual level, I don't think the way our bodies work really has changed, but the way our minds work maybe has been overly influenced by almost too much information, not enough about how to trust your own self and how to understand your own body and your own natural instincts. What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's almost trained out of us as women not
Yeah.
to trust ourselves and not to trust that inner voice. And when you're pregnant, no, I totally get it. I've, been there on your first baby, you almost abdicate responsibility to everybody else. They're the experts, but that can backfire as well when you leave all the decision making up to somebody else. And if things don't go as well as expected, then you're left with a lot of guilt about, should I have been more engaged? And again, we don't need those, heavy emotions coming into parenting. But I think where you see it most is around women not trusting their babies to sleep. That we now have this industry of training babies to sleep, training mothers to ignore their babies' cries and stand outside the door until they say it eventually works, but the stress that child has been put under, and eventually they don't just fall asleep. These children, these babies have been signaling for someone to come to them, and nobody has come, so they give up. So this is what we're teaching this new generation, that mom won't come, and if you can't rely on that relationship, what does that do to society when we've trained our babies that you're on your own once it's 9 o'clock at night?
Oh
My
God.
my gran, I know it's horrific. My gran is 94, but she was telling me before she had a neighbor who proudly, now my gran had 6 children, and this neighbor had a few, I don't know how many, not as many as my gran, but a few. And she proudly told her she didn't lose a night's sleep from any of her babies because she used to put them like away, separate from her. I won't tell you where she put them, but didn't sell it in this place. And like, it was quite interesting because I remember my gran telling me this when she was about 75, maybe 80. And she said it was when we were arranging care in the home for her. Well, she got still able, but needing support to stay at home and needing more care and more attention. And she was very grateful for that. But she's like, that woman ended up on her own. Nobody ever visited her. Nobody wanted to see her. None of her children had any relationship with her. They just left. They just went on and off. Like, and so you're reaping what, not that every mother who does that with her baby, I'm sure that woman had other issues as well. But like, when you sever that relationship, it's extremely difficult to rebuild that. And if we're teaching a whole generation or half a generation that that's the way that you do it, not that should be the exception, that should be the one that makes us go, oh, what? How could you do that? But instead we're saying, no, like, your newborn is manipulating you. Like,
and it's an industry. It's an industry now that it's literally preying on vulnerable mothers who are, of course, you're comparing yourself to the neighbor down the street whose baby seems to sleep 18 hours and your little one doesn't. And of course, you're exhausted in postpartum. And then if you're thinking about, even like further down the line, if you're going back to work, it's the sleep thing is. So I think we have to find a way we can support mothers to trust that they can trust their baby and talk about safe bed sharing. And because it's going to happen anyway, we might as well make sure parents know how to do it safely for their babies. Because this idea of, put the baby in the crib and don't look at the baby, and it just makes breastfeeding so much more difficult if you have to get up, pick up the baby. If you have baby next to you and there's ways to do it safely, and that it just makes such a difference to nighttime parenting if you can get some good support from the Lesh League or a public health nurse or even a lactation consultant to help you figure out feeding in bed safely. It's an absolute game changer for new parents.
It's like a catch-22 for mothers, Tracy, isn't it? Because in the antenatal side, they're told, they're a bad mother if they don't breastfeed, and if they choose to formula feed, it's this, that, and the other, and they're causing all this, whatever, they must breastfeed nearly. And then all of the support that's required to breastfeed is non-existent. It's just doesn't exist, and all of the advice they're given undermines breastfeeding. So then they have all this guilt of they set themselves up to breastfeed because they were guilted into it. Now they can't fulfill that
Do it.
expectation because
So
of
now they feel
what they were
guilty
taught.
again.
Now they feel guilty, even doubly guilty, as opposed
Yeah.
to a woman having all the information available for her, choosing how she wants to feed her baby, doing that in the most responsive way possible, whatever it looks like, breastfeeding or bottle feeding or whatever, like that they're able to all of that should be focused on how does that woman successfully do what she has chosen to do with her baby. And nothing
Yeah.
we teach new mothers looks like that, whether it comes from to do with bottle feeding, we're undermining them and that choice. And when it comes to breastfeeding, we're undermining them and that choice. And it's no wonder women are kind of left in this vacuum of not believing in themselves and then all of the negative stuff that comes to that. Like the whole sort of system is rigged against them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
I'll tell you
even
what.
how we teach breastfeeding is like we're still teaching breastfeeding to, you know, where I grab my little note here. We're still teaching this as being the position of choice instead of teaching evidence-based laid-back breastfeeding where mom is not getting nipple pain, babies' feeding behaviors are being triggered by full body contact with mom's body. Mom can lie back. I call it the Netflix position because you're literally, it's that position when you're lying back and you have the remote. Baby has gravity holding baby here. There's so much evidence for this, and yet it's still, there's a couple of units in Ireland that have staff that are aware of this, but we're now thankfully starting to see Margaret McGuigan from DKIT is getting ready to publish a paper showing her research with Irish midwives, why they aren't teaching the new evidence-based positions, because this position and all of this fiddling around causes nipple pain. We have baby's little feet kicking away here. They're not supported. So all of this, we need baby in this position. And if mom is cesarean, because the nipple is a dial, baby can be feeding lying back like this or like this, you know. There's many ways, and you're avoiding that cesarean wound, or if you've had, you know, if you saw perineum, you don't have to be sitting up in that fancy rocking chair. You can be lying back. Again, you're more likely to feed comfortably. You don't have to be looking into the crib. Is baby hungry? Is baby hungry? Because when baby is next to that baby buffet, baby will snack and snack and snack. So the first few days postpartum at home, this is what I'm helping moms do. We're lying back. You're just chilling. We are getting you recovered as quickly as possible because of all that access to that oxytocin producing feeding. So we're getting there. There are some great things happening, but it's just that. But it's the midwives that are pushing this. The midwives are behind it, and mothers are behind it because they're the ones that are emailing and writing to the hospital saying this just isn't good enough anymore. So that report that came out, Roisin, that I had mentioned, where we have, again, like this a maternal mortality rate of, like, we had, I think it was 24 deaths in the last 3 years, 24 maternal deaths, and they are contributing to the increase in mental health. So we had 8 women died by suicide. So it's, and where are we with mental health in this country and postpartum mental health? There are units that do have dedicated staff, but other than that, you're kind of on your own. So again, here's another reason to connect in with your public health nurse. If you have access to community midwives, or again, we're back to the doula as being that extra support to help you and your partner settle in with this the biggest transition of your adult life. You know, it's huge.
I remember.
I think that'd be great.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that would be great. I'll just give you a quick story. When I was breastfeeding Sam in 1996, he wouldn't feed when he first was born, and they told me they wanted to bring him up to the ICU to observe him for a few days. And I said I didn't want him to be bottle fed, and I was insisting on it at the time. And they put a tube down the back of his throat, and I would go up and express. And then they told me on the Sunday, if you let him bottle feed, you can take him home today. But obviously, if you're expressing and we'll have the tubes down his throat, then you have to leave him in here. So I rang my mum and I said, Mum, they let him bring me home, bring him home tonight if I bottle feed him. And he had been born on the Friday, and this was Sunday. And my mum says to me, "Oh, so how old is he now?" And I said, "What do you mean, how old is he? He's 2 days old." And she says, "Ah, yeah, and he's getting his own way already. Yeah, he'll be smoking by the time he's 10." So actually, he breastfed that night, and they did a whole load of tests on him, and he was grand anyway, and he went home. But I breastfed him for 13 months after that. So and then I was pregnant with Kim, and I was still breastfeeding. I was pregnant with Kim, and I was still breastfeeding him. So my mum's emotional blackmail worked there, but that's the kind of, yeah, she was always like that. She'd make you do her thing, even though without telling you to do it, she'd just make you do it.
Well, I remember the best advice I got when I had my first child. And there's that special newness and rawness when you have your first baby. And it was my friend Vicky. I met her. She used to be my riding instructor in Saudi Arabia. She had a stables in Saudi. She was an American from Texas. And she said to me, she wrote me a letter, and she said, no, she had a baby late in life, and she was in her 30s. And she said, now everyone's going to be giving you an abundance of advice.
Mm-hmm.
My advice to you is to trust your own intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, that is the best advice and the only advice I'm giving with you. And that made me cry, reading that letter at that time. Trust your own intuition.
Yeah.
Everyone's giving you you have an overload of information. Again, going back, trusting your information. And I think if that was one of the gifts that we gave to a younger generation was the gift of a doula.
Yeah.
To have
that. Definitely.
I would love a doula. I would love to have my daughter, my sons, like if I'm lucky enough to have grandchildren, my son's partners, to have a doula, because my midwife, I was born at home, and my mother's midwife ended up being my godmother. And there's always that bond with that. And I think it's the most sacred thing is to bring a baby into the world. The most sacred thing that we can do as women and as human beings and is to bring a baby into the world, that joy. And I remember too, my GP up in Derry, he says, I always love new mothers. And I went, what? And I was thinking, why is he loving new mothers? Well, crazy, There's always a glint in the eye for the first 6 months of a new mother. It's that miracle of being a mother, he said, for the first 6 months after birth.
There's nothing like being a mother. When I was a new mother at 34, and I thought people were looking at me going, God, she's a bit young to have a baby. Honestly, I felt like a little girl with a baby, but I wanted to show everyone my baby. I wanted to walk out, and I had him on one of those beautiful little slings. It was a little bright blue corduroy one. It was a really small one, and I just wanted to walk up and down the road and show everyone, look what I did. Look what I did. Would you just look? And I tell you, this is so funny. I went to the public health nurse was amazing. She used to visit me all the time. She loved me because I love breastfeeding and all that. And she thought I was amazing. And she told me to go to a mother and baby toddler group in Dunleary, So I went into this mother, and now the baby was, I don't know how old, maybe a few weeks old. And I walked into this thing, and it was about 11:15 in Dunleary, one on Morehampton Road or something. And I went in and I looked at all the women with the babies on their knees. And I said to myself, the whole time I was there, I said to myself, those poor mothers must be mortified to see my baby because my baby is so much more beautiful than their baby. I actually genuinely believed that in my heart. I just couldn't. I was so mortified for them. I swear to God. It's so funny, isn't it? So funny. Oh
but isn't that lovely though?
Yeah,
I think that it's like this baby is growing up knowing like they are so loved. You know,
Yes.
what can be a greater gift? I mean, yes, we send them to nice schools and get them educated, but knowing they are that loved, I think just
Yeah.
like it's amazing. Yeah.
Mm,
I
And
still
knowing
is.
that so many children don't get that as well.
yeah.
I still have
Us. Yeah.
the leggings that I had when I went into the labour ward with my daughter and my son. And my daughter said, I'm not going to wear them. I said, but I'm keeping them for you. And they're only about that size. Because I was a big duck with Naomi. You know, just a big duck. Oh, and
I love
then-
the name Naomi. It's a lovely name,
Yeah.
Naomi.
Oh,
Beautiful name.
thank you. It's funny enough too, you know, it's these personal little things that you only remember when you're talking about being in the labour ward. It comes back to you. I wasn't going to
Yeah.
call them Naomi, I still wanted to call them Mairead. And once the midwife brought her out and handed it before she even handed me, I said, I'm calling her Naomi. She don't know why, but I used to work in Outlegelvin at the time, the hospital, and I remember
Oh.
a lovely nurse up in the children's ward, and her name was Naomi, and I don't know how I remembered her at that moment. And I said, I'm calling her Naomi.
Wow.
Yeah.
My niece is called Naomi. My brother's
Okay.
daughter's first daughter is Naomi.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, Naomi was in when she was in sixth class. One of the boys was teaching me. Said, "You know what your name is backwards? I'm Oni. I'm Own."
Of course they found that out. Of
Yeah, the
course.
boys do. When you're on the
Of
TV,
course.
you know. But we've come to the
Yeah.
end of our segment. And you know what? We really have to keep this conversation going. So, you know, especially Tracy and Sorsa, that's your area of background and expertise. Anything comes up, let's talk about it and get it out there to the audience. Let's just really flood the audiences in here in Ireland and abroad about, you know, the beautiful gift of life of prenatal and antenatal childbirth and just breastfeeding and everything to do with bringing beautiful babies into the world.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for an extended segment of the show, but I just want to thank you, Tracy Donegan, Sorka and Rosemary and Paula, of course, for coming on our first ever woman-to-woman panel discussion going forward. So thank you so much indeed. I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was absolutely
Thanks a million.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you very
Right.
much,
Thank you,
everyone.
Roisin.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Now for our extra segment of this show, coming up here in Ireland, we have two referendums coming up on International Women's Day on the 8th of March. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of ambiguity, and a lot of vagueness in the language and the wording, and also in the rushness. If there's such a word, is there such a word as rushness? The rush to get to pass this legislation and the referendums at absolutely speed of light. So we just want this. There is no platforms in Ireland, and as a former radio presenter myself, I know exactly that there is no, in the last couple of years, there's just one-sided bias in an awful lot of the media. So we're going to use this Confident Women Ireland channel to actually create this alternative fact news is as to why Irish voters should vote no in the next referendum. So, ladies, I'd just love to hear your thoughts. I know mine, and something that's disturbed me over this week was, and I think it was on Thursday up in Dublin, that on the news, it was that one woman came on the news and said that she was a woman parenting alone, a lone parent, and her son came home and said, Mommy, he learned this in school, and said, Mommy, in school today they said that we weren't a family because we were alone, I didn't have a daddy, I'm a lone parent. And I think, and it really got me really thinking, because for me, I'm a divorced mother who parented alone from day one. And I'm from the north, and I came down south, and that was something that was instilled in me by everyone who I spoke to in authorities. You are protected under the Constitution. And I thought that was an awful lot of fake news, misinformation, and really to actually be telling children within the schools that they're not a family because their mother is parenting alone. So for me, I think that is a misrepresentation. I think for me, why I'm voting no is definitely one, it's being rushed through. They're not thinking about, they're not having a full engagement, and there isn't two sides of the argument being especially spoken on the mainstream media and within the print and broadcast media. The NGOs are all pushing it because they're being paid to push it, in my opinion,
Yes.
and from what I'm hearing and seeing. And also, I think for me, why are they taking women out of the article? They don't need to take the word woman out of the article. They could add in husband, father, man, or grandparents, as some people said, or whatever. But to take in for this, what is the word? Relationship? What was the word they're putting in? Durable,
Durable.
durable
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's so vague. And now they're leaving it up to the courts of law to define what a family is and a durable relationship is. So I'm going to hand it over to you, ladies. You probably know much more than what I do about this referendum. So, Sorka, you represent the Countess. So what is yours and the Countess' view? And I have the leaflet back here because I was canvassing for you. Why we all should vote no in the referendum.
Yeah, well, essentially what you said at the beginning there in terms of the recognition of the rights of mothers, that is essentially what Article 41.2 does, is it recognises that the contribution of women, and in particular mothers, is extremely valuable to the state. And it says in a very beautiful language, I think, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. Woman gives to the state. Okay, it doesn't say she must only be a housewife in order to do that. But we do that when we are pregnant, we do that when we give birth, we do that when we breastfeed, we do that when we nurture our infants and we raise healthy, attached, beautiful families who grow up into hopefully healthy adults, right? And that is invaluable. The second part of the article that they're proposing to remove in its entirety says that the state shall therefore endeavour, and this is the part that was relevant to you, Roisin, the state shall endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of the duties in their home. And in the Irish language, it's actually more beautiful than that, because what it says is Tugan an van dun start, trina sales sa tailach. And tailach is that word that's been mistranslated into home. And what tailach means, if you ask any Gaeilgeoir of any level, what does tailach mean? It's your household, your family grouping. It's not sweeping the floors, it's raising your family. And it says afterwards, in anulgish sa tailach, her duties in the home, but dulgish is a different word as well, because dulgish represents not only your duties but your responsibilities, and your responsibilities as a woman to be around for your children, to be engaged with your children. That's what's important in this. And if you go back to where this came from, Eamon de Valera, whom we all have different opinions on, I'm sure, Eamon de Valera was the child of a single mother. And Eamon de Valera's mother was unable to raise him because she had to work. This is a cry of a child who does not want another child to suffer from that. And that is why it's so important that we retain this beautiful wording, this beautiful notion, and this explicit protection for women and mothers. And removing it is an insult to women and to fathers as well, because we have within the Countess single fathers who've raised their children, and the reason why was because they had single parents allowance. The reason they had single parents allowance was because they had equality with mothers. Why do mothers have single parents allowance? Because of this clause. If the state wanted to recognise that fathers also contribute to the well-being of the state, which I believe they do, they could have done that. But they didn't. They decided that this wasn't worth including. and they would like us to remove this. And we are encouraging people to say, no, this is valuable, this is beautiful, and this is important. And this is our foundational document. We should not be messing with it on a whim, for fashion, for press. No, thank you. No.
No.
And sorry to yank on about it, but I have the text open beside me. So the second part that they want to replace it with is to do with the provision of care by members of a family to one another. Doesn't oblige the state to do anything. It doesn't oblige the state to support those carers. It doesn't recognise the rights of disabled people to have care given to them, and it doesn't go far enough. It acts as an unnecessary replacement. If anything, it should be an addition rather than a replacement. And the second tiny little, extremely worrying, everyone's ears pinged up, was the durable relationship part, which is a tiny change to the definition of a family. So at the moment it says the family is very important. It's a whole article about the importance of the family. But it says after the word family in it, whether founded on marriage or other durable relationships. Anyone got an idea what a durable relationship is?
Well,
No, but if you're living in the same house and you have a good neighbor that minds your cash all the time for you, that's fairly durable, you know.
Well,
it could be grounds for inheritance.
It's so hugely open to interpretation that it will end up in the courts, and the courts will decide what's durable. There's no other way. If that wording goes in, it will damage the meaning.
And you know the way paternity court is bad, divorce court is worse.
Yeah.
But durable relation court is going to be 1,000,000 times worse. Like, because in paternity court, you can say, well, at least, you know, you have a paternity test. You're going to be able to tell, you know, who's lying. Well, no, I never slept with him. I didn't. He's never been my boyfriend. He has. We were good friends. We were lovers, you know, but you had a child together. This proves this. So that's fairly much proof. But you can't prove, oh, I lived with her for 10 months. I loved him. I didn't love him. He was my boyfriend. He wasn't. We were broke up. We weren't, you know, I mean, how many step parents are going to lay claim to that estate?
Yeah.
You know, when children should be getting the money, and if the mother happens to marry 3 or 4 men, you know, say, or the man marries 3 or 4 women, are they all durable too? I mean,
are they all going to have a say in the upbringing of a child that's not even theirs, biologically theirs, you know?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between durable and indurable? You know, like,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's why, and we've already seen from the Gender Recognition Act where a change that was introduced because of progress and because of sort of societal desires to seem like we're the best little country in the world, kind of the most progressive we have ended up with unforeseen consequences to the change in the definition of, for example, womanhood. And so our organisation is doubly aware of those kind of risks and would be extremely concerned that this definition essentially removes any kind of meaning from the word family that we all kind of have a common understanding of as it is. We understand a family is a parent and child, a family is 2 married people who don't have children, you know, a family is a blood related group, or a group that's formed by marriage. How a family formed by durable relationship is defined, nobody knows. It's
the craziest thing. Why? I mean, to change a constitution is such a huge thing. I mean, we took so long to change the abortion, to change the divorce. We had to go. I mean, we debated for 30 years about that.
Yeah.
Before we actually changed it, and we went back and forth, and people fought on radio, on TV, on the Late Late Show for years. And this has been rushed through. We're not even being, and I mean, anything that's being rushed through, you have to question why. That's number one. Number two, I don't trust the government at all. At all. None of them. No, and I'm sorry if that's just my opinion. So anything they propose, I'm just going to question it. If anything they propose to rush through, I'm going to question it doubly. And number three, I want to be recognised as as the person that has created my home and provides the centre of the home, where in every family that I know of, the mother makes the home. She is the heart of the home. She makes the house a home. She does most of the unpaid work in every family from she's born till she's dead. And then that's including buying Christmas presents, going to, going to the school meetings, picking out the uniform, getting the books, picking out the subjects for the leaving cert, buying presents.
Sorry, who's combing the head lice?
Head lice, combing the head lice out, worrying about everything way too much. Cleaning behind the toilet. I mean, things that just don't happen unless you're the mum. And giving up everything to make sure that your child has the most comfortable life is very common for mothers. And giving up your dreams to make sure that your disadvantaged child has the best care and education is the number one thing that mums do that no one else does.
Yeah.
And I know many mums that are so smart, and I'm going to cry now. These women are brilliant women that could have been the president of the United States. Has nothing on these women.
No.
They have given up their lives to look after their child who needs them, and no one else can take that place on this earth.
Yeah.
As long as they live, that is their priority. And I am sorry, I am not trying to be sexist, but I do not believe that any other person can fill that role. And that's my stance. A mother is extra special.
Yeah.
And that was me. I'm your sister there, because when I separated and divorced, my husband never gave 1 penny, not even a Christmas card, birthday card. And I gave up my life so my children would have a life. I was to stay at home. I went back to education, and now reinvented myself at 50, getting back in. I'm lucky. All the odds were against my daughter. Her dream at 10 years of age to become a doctor. She did radiography. She missed out on the HPAC in school by 5 points. Then went back and did it. Repeated 6th year. Missed out on 1 point. Did radiography, and then this year she qualified. And I had to give. And my son the same. He's in the defense. He's over in the Lebanon as we speak. I had to give up. I didn't have and what gets me is the social bias. It wasn't, I never received any bias or any problems about being a lone parent from governments or TDs or anything, because it was and they respected. Everyone respected that I was protected under the Constitution. Where I had the issues was the societal bias, and especially within teachers and the school and educational system, and with mothers and other single mothers and lone parents said the same thing. It was our children weren't invited to the birthday parties because we came from a lone parent. So for me, when that lady spoke on the news saying, "Oh, my child came home, I'm very upset because he was told we're not a family under the Constitution because of I don't have a father," I thought that was deliberate, strategic misinformation and fake news, and did more detrimental harm to that young child and to any children listening to the news.
Yeah.
Tracy, is there any more points from the Countess, Sorka?
Just to kind of back up what Rosemary said there's without being the kind of sort of stick in the mud or whatever, the boring one, but there is actually statistics to back up what Rosemary just said there, in that women do double the amount of unpaid housework than men in Ireland. Irish women do double that of the women in Denmark. You cannot remove those kind of inequalities by simply changing the word in a document. It's hard to address those. Denmark and Sweden have had to work really, really hard to achieve that kind of equality. And our government thinks that if we just rewrite the constitution, it'll magically make our lives better. It really won't. It won't make any meaningful difference. And it could be, in fact, extremely damaging. And the other, just one final thing about the speed at which this is being done. There is a case due to come before the Supreme Court where a mother will be relying on that clause around care because she wants to be able to stay at home to look after her disabled child, her disabled adult child. So they are hurrying this through.
Yeah.
When they know that it will be relied upon in court by a mother. That to me signals the absolute disdain that they have for women and children and mothers.
Yeah.
And
Sure, you
it's
see
women
it,
and
Vicky,
children
with
who will suffer from that.
as well.
Sorry,
It's the
Rosemary.
same. No, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just saying, when they promised Vicky Phelan, when they promised us they'd never drag anyone through court, and then they did it to her, and she, I mean, no, she stood up and said, "Don't you dare come near my funeral, please. Don't you, Leos Bradker, you stay away. HSE, stay away. I don't want to hear it."
Yeah.
And then it just, I don't understand. It's just, you know what? We never even voted this government in either. They're just, I don't know what they're doing there.
But they're presenting this as if it's kind of, they're doing us a favor by taking out this sexism. What? Like this?
Oh,
no, thank you.
Can you here we are again? But wasn't it only last year that they were trying to remove the word mother from maternity? Like, what is their deal with
what is their game?
Like,
what is?
I mean, you have to look at, okay, with everything that's going on in Ireland at the moment, we've got cost of living crisis, homeless crisis,
housing,
more people on trolleys than ever before in our hospitals.
Yeah,
no and the
housing.
Thought this was a good idea to invest millions into
20 million.
Nonsensical.
It's just like, how dare they? It's like that woman choosing to translate leaflets into 3 languages instead of taking a human rights case. It's just all this icing and this decoration. Yeah, it's all icing and the cake is rotten, you know. And I mean, the cake is disgusting, and that they're busy icing away and re-icing it, and just
I find
because it looks progressive.
It looks progressive. Which I find even more astounding by really pushed through from the Green Party, and I'm going to say the Green Party and the Minister of Children, who happens to be a man, and telling us women, I find that even insulting. Again, pushing this to the Minister for Children wanting to take the word mother out of the Constitution.
Yeah. And that removal of the word mother, like Tracy said, that was that removal of mother from maternity legislation was hidden. It was minuscule. It was spotted by our organisation and it was challenged by our organisation. And had that not happened, we would be looking at maternity legislation that only described pregnant people.
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
insulting that they would continue down this road. Now they want to remove us from the Constitution because they couldn't remove us from the legislation. And that it just it enrages me that so many are going along with it. So many
and
are believing that this is a good thing, and it's not.
But did anyone
putting
see
it on Mother's Day putting it on International Women's Day?
Yeah.
Now, number one, as if it's good for women. Number one, and number two,
closure of schools is great, isn't it?
And then the unplanned closure of schools. So we're all going to be stuck minding the kids, and we can't even go and bloody vote. For God's sake.
What is your main? What was it? Your main concerns, and why do you think people should vote no?
Just for the reasons stated, it feels like this is again being rushed through. We've already seen the government try to pull this once before, which the Countess thankfully spotted, but they're coming back for a second run at us. something's not adding up. And I think, I don't know if any of you saw, there's a meme going around at the moment, and it's a picture of Mary McAleese and Mary Robinson. And it's something like, thankfully, we were able to get out from behind the kitchen sink and go to work, kind of thing. Like, they were not prevented from taking these, incredibly, high profile roles. And no woman is being prevented from working outside the house, but we need to protect the glue that keeps the fabric of society together, which is the lion's share, which is women's work, and is what we do. And we need to be recognized. Removing us from the Constitution is an absolute insult to women in Ireland.
And what I find interesting, all these NGOs that are pushing the yes vote, well, I would love to ask them, did the Constitution stop them from becoming CEOs of their NGOs and being paid to push the yes vote?
Well, the thing is that the inequality that stops women from achieving those kind of levels, because truth be told, like, there still is a lot of women who could achieve those roles but don't. That inequality doesn't stem from this clause. That inequality is systemic. It exists because of our sex. It exists because we are women. It exists because we have babies. We have inadequate childcare. We have inadequate social supports. We have, maternity leave and bias against women who take maternity leave. We have all these issues facing us as women. They are what creates barriers to women becoming CEOs or presidents or whatever else they would like to become. And you can't remove those barriers by simply removing a word from removing a clause from the Constitution. Like, that's, again, it's that rearranging the deck of the Titanic. We're just, it's messing around with something that is fundamentally important. This recognition that, in fact, things that we do things for society that cannot be done by other people, that can only be done by women, and that are of benefit.
And there again, it's even what politician now, how many politicians, you can count them on the fingers in your hand, who actually remember what the definition of a woman is. They all of a sudden, all the politicians in Leinster House, and they are the legislators of our country, bringing into law, and they have brain fog about what is the definition of a woman. And again, that's where it's pregnant people. I mean, I think I'm going to actually really enjoy the next 6 weeks or so with the segments of the after the shows, talking about, why Irish voters should vote no, because I think this has detrimental effect on our citizens of Ireland and our children and our families, and really the culture of Ireland as well. But more importantly, it's the greater good of humanity for me, and the joy of a mother giving birth, as we were talking about in the program. But I think there's an awful lot of conversations, and also it really, I think, bringing it out to this public, talking about it, gives other people the courage to start talking about it, because for the last couple of years we've been, let's say, influenced and programmed not to talk about anything, because you're either, and again, I'm going to say it, and no one can call me right wing, because I was in the Labour Party, the Women's Officer for Carla Kilkenny, and many people asked me to do their PR campaigns for the general election, and I said no. So no one can call me far right, but this excuse of calling people far right because they disagree with the government is absolutely a farce, and it's fake news. Yeah. And I never thought I'd ever say them words, coming from a media background, going fake news. It's just going full circle, and it takes women like you ladies to have the courage to stand up, and the women who have the courage, who don't want to put their face forward, but they are planting seeds and having the conversations with people behind the scenes quietly, are equally heroes and warriors in this. And I'm calling it a war against women. And that's exactly what
I agree.
Agree.
Well, thank you so much indeed, ladies. Tracy, Donegan, Sorka. Am I pronouncing your name right, Sorka? Am I? No, I know I'm laughing. Sorka.
I'm sorry. If you get it in the right ballpark, I don't really mind too much. If you asked me what my name was, I would say it's Sorka.
Circa. I can't pronounce it with my
Yeah.
speech. Say it again.
Circa.
Circa. I can't get
Yeah.
that. My tongue at the top of my mouth and Circa. Thank you so much. And Rosemary McLaughlin. Rosemary, and we have to also give a shout out to the lovely furry friend there.
This is Yogi Pogi Wogi. You want to go for walkies? Want to go for walkies?
love. Thank you so much indeed.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Slán.
Bye-bye.
Lon.
Go on.